Welcome everyone to Two Off the Tee Fantasy Six Packs Golf Show. I am your host, Keith Flemming. We are back after a long football season, and I am very happy today to have the lovely Kelly Phoenix joining me. Kelly, you're fresh off like just dominating Super Bowl media week. I saw you everywhere. How much fun was that whole experience? Because it looked like it was a blast.
It was so much fun. That was my third media week.
Oh, that's
And
amazing.
every time I just feel like it gets better and better every time. It's one of those things where you're like, am I really here right now?
It's like gotta pinch yourself and be like, is this
Yeah.
real life? I really do. Like I loved the questions that you were asking people. Like I know the one with Kelsey got a lot of attention, which my wife is a big Taylor Swift fan, absolutely loved, and we're cat lovers, so that's a twofer for us. But I really like the one you asked AJ Brown,
Mhm.
and just
That was
like
my favorite.
I like the way that you're thinking because I know some people they go there, and I understand the desire of just wanting to make a splash and but they end up asking like stupid questions, or questions that are just outrageous. And what I liked about yours was they were unique, which is always great. Because these guys get asked the same stuff over and over and
Mhm.
over again. But yours were, really cool. So
Well,
Joe
thanks.
Bond back in the man running F6P, listening to golf. That's how I know I've been here 3 years, is I got Joe and he says, welcome to you, Kelly. I got, Joe to kind of follow golf a little bit, which is great. Cause I know when I first started, he was just kind of like, yeah, you can run with it. When I came over and did football, and I told him, hey man, I love golf as well. So let's do some of that. Um, let's start with kind of like what I like to call teeing off. Cause there's a few things going on. The biggest being there may be a new big bad in town, and it's Ludvig Oberg. I keep doing that. I
Over.
keep wanting to say Aberg. Did they not swap that though? Was it not that they called him Aberg for a while and all of a sudden they started calling
I
him Oberg?
think they did, and he
Finally was
corrected
like,
them. Yeah, Aberg.
I got such a kick out of that
Yeah.
because I don't have a name like that, but I've been around enough people that it's funny seeing when they get comfortable enough with people to be like, hey, that's actually not how my name is pronounced, which makes me feel like a jerk when it's like, oh my God, I've been calling you by the wrong name all this time. And it cracks me up that it appears that even at like a professional level, these professional athletes are like, it's fine. I'll eventually correct them. But um, I'm in awe of this kid. Last year made such a splash because he was the first person to ever play in a Ryder Cup
Yeah.
without ever, competing in a major championship. And then now he's won on the European Tour. He has 2 PGA wins, this being the biggest because it was obviously a signature. I hate that term, event, the big boy tour. But it, I think that this is their next star. I just worry that the PGA Tour is going to bundle it because, like Scheffler and like a lot of these other guys, not exactly a huge personality, but I think that that's where the PGA needs to figure out, okay, what about this personality, this guy's personality can we highlight and can we get out there and get people to interact? Because I mean, obviously, he's a very good looking
Yep.
young man. He hits the
Mhm.
ball a freaking mile, which everybody loves that. That drive he hit on 18 in the situation was absolutely outrageous. I think it was like 350 yards right down the dead center of the fairway. And I don't know about you. I get frustrated with this, just with the golf coverage in general. I know that he was, kind of in the background. Obviously, he was, I think, 3 or 4 shots back after he made that second straight bogey on 5, but we did not see him again on the coverage at all until he had the eagle putt on 12. And I
Yeah.
don't understand why they go away from people with that kind of talent because I still want to see shots from them. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, even if they're not still right there in the thick of the tournament, I don't know why they just go away from them.
I just felt like they didn't think he was going to come back. It was going to be a runaway tournament, and then he came in and proved them wrong. I've been high on him for since the start of the season. In fact, in one of my fantasy leagues, I can't use him anymore during this segment because I've
Kept
used
it up.
him too much. But I mean, it's hit or miss right now with him, but I think that he's a strong candidate for any DFS lineup or fantasy lineup or prop bets in like your top 10, top 20s. I think for sure that's always safe.
Yeah, I did have a future bet on him for the Masters, but I wish now I would have just took futures for him for all 4 majors, because one of the big downsides of this PGA LIV, ordeal is the fact that the betting odds are just nowhere what they were. Like,
Right.
you used to get really good odds, especially on guys that had like never won or only had, say, 1 win. And now you're getting, like this week, guys like Ashley Biate, who I think is amazing, and I'm about to recommend him when we get into our plays and bets. But he's like 14-1, and it's like, really, he doesn't win 1 out of every 14 events, and that's kind of, to me, how those odds should, be taken, considering you're trying to pick out usually like 140 guys. But I really do think the sky's the limit. Do you think he wins a major this year? Because I do think he does.
Yeah, it definitely feels plausible. He's talented, like you said. He's young, he's strong, he's handsome. I think that he's going to feel that confidence that comes along with those things and continue to play well and win. Winning a major is not out of, any realm of possibility. It's definitely possible.
Yeah, and he already had, obviously, the runner-up last year at Augusta. I think he
Mhm.
finished 12th at the Open as well. I know he missed the cuts in the other 2, but yeah, I always know when my wife is asking about a golfer, that normally means that they're very attractive. It's a pretty good giveaway, because like Adam Scott, I remember, I think, was the first one we were together. She's like, "Who's this Adam Scott guy?" And I'm like, "Oh, you're interested in Adam Scott?" And then I realized, "Oh, wait a minute, you just find him really attractive." And obviously, the first time she saw over, she's like, "Who's that?" And I was like, "Oh, that's a big, young, handsome Swede who happens to hit the ball 400 miles." The next thing I kind of wanted to discuss, because I don't know if you were listening or watching when Tiger came on the telecast, but he had, some interesting comments about the PGA LIV deal, made it seem that he was hinting that they're getting closer to some kind of deal. I am at the point now where I just, until something is done, I'm tired of hearing about it, because what is it? We're going on like 2 years, I think, since they announced some kind of merger, and
Yeah,
nothing.
2023. Mhm.
That is insane. Like, it's
June, I
insane.
think. Yeah.
No, I think you're right. I mean, it's crazy that they
Mhm.
are still, what's going on, Ronnie? That they are still, talking about this. I do feel better. Obviously, I don't think Tiger is somebody who just says things, off the cuff. So he must feel confident. We saw that I know that some of the majors are starting to find different avenues for these LIV guys to get in outside of the world rankings. One of the worst tweets I saw the week in golf this week was everybody pumping up John Rahm for the first time since 2017 is out of the top 50 in the official world golf ranking. Well, no shit. Like, he's not getting any points except for 4 events a year. Like, it's just, I hate that kind of
Yeah.
clickbait
Mhm.
stuff that you get. But do you think that this is done? Or are you kind of, in the same boat as me? You're just tired of talking about it, just get it done? I do want them back. Like, golf is better with all these guys playing. They need to figure something out.
Yeah. I had actually forgotten about it, it feels like, and then it's come up again quickly, apparently. Monahan's asked for Trump to become involved, which is a weird whole situation in itself. And then you have Rory McIlroy chiming in, who was, of course, the biggest opponent to LIV. And now he's just like, I think he's sick of talking about it. And he's saying, listen, we can't look back. Whatever happens, happens. We have to move forward and get over it. If you want to play golf, you have to get over it. And
Yep.
I think I'm in the same boat as Rory. Like, let's just play golf.
Yeah, the one thing I think that a lot of people don't think of when they're like, well, what is the big deal, about them getting back together? The PGA guys that turned down the money, that's the big
Right.
deal. Was like they were, I think, told from the PGA brass in no uncertain terms that like you leave,
You're
that's it,
done. Yep.
right? And so they turned down, we're talking huge
Huge amounts.
sums of
Yep.
money, like, even for these guys, life-changing money.
Mhm.
And that's where I do understand like why they would be like, look, I stayed, right? Like I ended up, weathering the storm, not taking the money and run. And then for those guys to kind of be able to come back under the exact same, parameters that it was before. uh, Again, that's where I understand both sides of it. But at the same point, I want to see more like,
Yeah.
it's making it like tennis to where it feels like the majors are the only really important events. It was nice to see the Genesis last week. Like that felt like the first PGA event I can remember in a while that was really important. There was a lot of big names there. But overall, like again, this week, no disrespect to the Mexico Open or the guys playing in it,
Yeah.
pretty weak field. Like I
Yeah.
don't remember too many PGA events like this. Um, One other thing I wanted to discuss, how much of the TGL have you watched and what are kind of your thoughts?
Very little. I don't think I'm the demographic for that, or even you
Nope,
are the
you're absolutely.
demographic for that. I think the demographic is your 20-something bro, that is that parking lot pro dressed to the nines. He's heading out. He may be good at golf. He might not be terrible at golf, but they have that certain mentality. The music's pumping. We're like high-fiving each other. It's great. It's just not my jam.
I am right there with you. Oh, look at Dave Eddy in the house. Dave's actually getting into golf, Kelly, right
All
now. He just got
right.
some sticks. I mean, obviously he's sitting on simulators because it's a little cold up north, but I'm very excited to see him taking up the game, which is, just the best as we know. I'm 100% with you on this. Like, I've tried to watch it. I will admit the matches yesterday were really competitive and kind of fun. Like I watched the end of the Fleetwood. I think that was the first match where they ended up holing out, or Fleetwood did, in the chip off or whatever at the end of the match. And then I did see the Boston versus I don't know who they were playing, but anyway, it came down to the last hole. Wyndham Clark made a putt at the very end to win. It was pretty cool that Rory like threw the timeout flag right as he was about to attempt the game, winning putt. And so they had to, wait. Just like there's some cool stuff about it, but it's about growing the game.
Yep,
And
exactly.
that's what I get so frustrated with as somebody who's worked in the golf business for most of my adult life, that, whether it be hoodies or music in the carts, like it's a lot of times the old, guys and gals that are complaining about all this stuff. And if young people don't get into something, it dies. Like that's
Yep,
just the way the world
yep,
works. And if you're not trying to bridge that, do you really care about, you know, this thing, or do you just care about yourself? Right. Because if you care about yourself, I can understand you'd be like, oh, I don't want that. But if you truly care and love golf, you
yep.
want it to continue to grow and thrive. And it needs young people for that. So I think that's where they're going with this. I like that this shows more of the players' personalities, which is what
Yeah,
I've been screaming from the mountaintops for the PGA coverage for years. Like, just like follow a million different examples of how to kind of, these guys are not wearing helmets or jerseys. It's the easiest thing in the world. Like, we should be getting to know these players as individuals. That would give you rooting interest. Look at,
yep,
like, the F1 series and even, Full Swing. So it's good to see some of that, even in a different thing like TGL. So I have high hopes for it. I hope that it continues to grow. And, as a Tiger mark, I'll always watch Tiger Woods play golf. Like,
yeah,
it doesn't matter. He could be, you know, in his 80s, hitting the ball 150
yeah,
yards down the line. As long as he's in that, Tiger red and he's dressed to the nines in Nike, I am the best. So Dave said, first of all, he shot a 95 on the similar today. Love that. Always get out of those triple digits. And he just wanted to stop by and say, hey, you are the best, Dave, man. One of the best at DFS football, DFS, hell, everything, basketball, baseball. Dave is the man. You can get all of his great thoughts on the Fantasy Six Pack Discord. So we're here this week to cover, again, sorry to the Mexico Open. We're not trying to crap on you, but not exactly a marquee event. It's kind of wild to think 3 years ago, John Rahm, played in this and won this event. And then again, to look at the field where you have Ashley Beate, Patrick Rogers, like those guys at the top of the betting board. This is a venue where we have seen now 3 events. They've done 3 years of this. And I don't know about you, Kelly, but for me, normally I look at a lot of, strokes gained categories, etc. It really feels like this course, it's very important to have played well here and to play. There's about 5 or 6 other, most of them coastal courses. Very important to hit the ball long, have a lot of iron shots in, say over 175, 200 yards. And there's a pattern, which we don't get a lot of these weeks, where I leaned way more heavily into has players had success at this venue, and have they had success? There's like basically 5 other venues that I included when doing mine. And if they had, say, 3 or 4 top 10s, or, they've made the cut in a bunch of them, I leaned into that way more than, what I normally do with recent form or strokes gained, approach, or any of those statistics. We'll see if that works. Sometimes it works out great when you feel so confident about going one avenue for how you're going to try to track this stuff for a week. But you look, even the guys in the field this week, there's several of them that every year they've done really well here. And obviously you want guys to hit a long way, because this is a course that it's long. The fairways are 4 miles wide. There's not really any, penal rough. So you can just let it rip. There's no worries about if you necessarily hitting it straight, just as long as you're hitting it far. And then again, for me, it's like the long iron players, obviously an advantage. And then you kind of have those slow, sticky greens, which you would think that would be easier. But for most of these pros, they actually struggle on those, because I just think they're used to stuff that's so faster. What did you kind of look at when putting together your, plays and stuff this week?
Yeah, definitely looking at course history for sure. Who's played well at this course, I think, is really important, especially when the field is thin and you're not exactly sure. If you're new to golf, even if you're not new to golf, a lot of these names are not going to be familiar to you. So looking at course history is something that's really important to me. I have like these dots I like to connect. So I go through, I start a pool, who I like, and then I start weeding it down. But I really like to look at Data Golf. They have a course fit tool that shows you the player's strengths versus the course. So that's something that I look at. I look at predictive outcomes. That's something that I like to look at as well. So combining all of those certain data points shakes out to a handful of people. And then when we're talking DFS, then I have to look at salary and be like, well, shoot.
It's a different animal for sure, like the DK compared to the betting plays. I have, though, in the last year, really been leaning more into just trusting the process. And like, I give 10 DK plays every week in my article, and I try to make that most of my betting pool. Like, I will make bets outside of it, but I'm trying to really concentrate to where I feel both comfortable, where, from a betting perspective and a DK perspective, these are kind of people. Now, some of them may be prop bets, obviously, like with the lower price guys where it's a top 20 or a top 10, but I just feel like that it kind of helps on the weeks that you hit. That not only will you have a good DFS week, you'll also have a good, hopefully profitable week on the betting board. Those 5 courses, by the way, just real quickly to go through, that I use for my comps. Grand Reserve Country Club, which is where they have the Puerto Rico Open. Torrey Pines, where they just had the Genesis and the Farmers this year. Weird year, just because of everything that's been going out in California. They've already played it twice. The Corrales Golf Club, which is the Punta Cana Championship that they do every year. El Cardona, which is the Worldwide Technology Championship. That's a relatively new event. And then Houston Open at Memorial Park. is another one that I think is pretty similar since they moved to Memorial, because that's a course that you just bomb away. You look like Stefan Yager won there just this last year. He's, another one of these guys that's done very well at this venue. Just a lot of stuff that I've read, and just looking at people that have played or done well in this event, there's a lot of correlation to that course. And that, as we were just talking about, I think is one of the keys, is to try to figure out, okay, where is, the correlation in these things, because there's so much data out there now that I think that's the key, right? Is finding what stats for a certain venue or which courses,
Patterns.
kind of
I
fit.
look for patterns.
Exactly. That's probably
Yeah.
a better word. Yeah, is patterns. And then really sticking to it. That's the hardest part for me, is like trusting what you're doing
Yeah.
and then sticking to that. Because then it's kind of like what I do in DK lineups at time, where like Dave Eddy, for instance, has tried to teach me in football to not, have as wide of a player pool each week. You know what I mean? And really kind of wean it down. But it's the second guess nature of myself, where I'm like, well, maybe it's this, and so it truly is, I think, just, picking as you point, like a strategy, figuring out the pattern that you see for this week, and then kind of going all in on it.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with you. And I enjoy having a smaller pool. And the way I feel more confident about that pool is the more and more I see the same names popping up on any of my like cross checks.
Yep.
So my pool end up being a name that's been in the top sections of all of my cross checks. And that's kind of how it shakes out. And then when it comes to DFS, if I don't have enough lower salaried players, then you have to really dig in some more and just be like, what's the potential of this guy just having a great week?
100%. And that's something that, having like played and worked in the golf business so long, I kind of try to trust my gut a lot of times on those,
Mm-hmm.
and they're a little less logical, to be honest. Like, I
Yeah,
don't
for sure.
have, like the data and stuff to back it up, but it can be as simply like this week for like the DK plays. Like Aaron Badley is somebody that I put in a good bit of lineups because he's made the cut twice there. He typically does well on easy venues, and the scoring, yes, like it's pretty low here, but it's not out of control. And those are the events that his short game is so good that he
Yeah,
typically can make the cut, which that's all I'm asking for a guy that's
exactly.
6,200. So getting into like the DK plays, I think it's a really important week to do like at least 2, maybe 3 9K guys. And then what I tried to do is maybe have 1 or 2 guys in that 6K range.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, you just kind of, figure it out. But like for me, the guys that you have to play, or at least I haven't a lot of, Ashley Biate, I know it stinks when a guy's the most expensive,
Yeah.
and he's 14-1 to win, 3-1 to top, I believe it's 5. Yeah, but I mean, I think he's the best player in this field at this point. Like, just if you're looking at just from a straight golfer standpoint, his worst finish this season is 37th across 6 events. So he's really getting very steady and just consistent, which you love to see with guys this expensive, because there's nothing worse than spending 10 or 11K of your
Oh
salary
my
and a guy
gosh.
misses the cut. It makes you want to scream.
Yeah.
He did well here in his only, appearance 2023, finishing 4th. And then again, like to get into, what that kind of model I was looking at is that top 10 finishes at El Cardano, Grand Reserve. Like, he's done well at these other venues. He plays well in windy conditions, which that's the one factor this week that could play a wild card, is if the winds really blow. But him and Stefan Yager are the 2 guys that I have in the most lineups that are expensive. And again, with Yager, same thing. Both of these guys hit it a mile. They're both good long iron players. And Yager's another guy that just has a litany of success on these venues. He won at Memorial, finished 3rd at Torrey Pines, 21st in driving distance, top 35 in strokes gained off the tee. So for like the expensive guys, those are the 2 I kept circling to, with one other name. Who are kind of the most expensive players that you were looking at?
I was only looking at one expensive player this week, only because I've been on the Hogarden brothers this season.
Mm-hmm.
I really like watching them play. I think they're exciting. I go back and forth between if I like Rasmus or Nikolai better.
It's like which
Um,
Jonas brother you like more? Is it the kind of
exactly.
that kind of deal?
And I didn't see any course history for Rasmus here, but I did for Nikolai, and
Mm-hmm.
he finished 52nd last year and 33rd the year before. They're saying Rasmus is worth 10.1K on DraftKings, and it makes me a little nervous just not knowing, that he's not played here before. How is that going to turn out? So if I spend that money, I don't know. I may go just for Nikolai simply because it's 8.1K versus that 10.1K, and then to hang out there in the eights for a hot minute and the mid to low sevens instead of spending so much there in the top tier.
What are some of those other 8K people you like?
Bjorn Olensen.
Oh, first of all, Kelly, I'm a country bumpkin and mispronounce every name in the world. So don't ever feel bashful around me because if anyone understands if you struggle with a name, I can't get any of these guys right, like ever.
Well, yeah. I like Thorbjorn Olensen.
Yep.
I like him at 8.2K. Grayson Sig at
Mm-hmm.
8K. I think that's a good one with good course history. So those ones I have there in the eights.
Yeah, I really like Sig. He's one of those guys, again, at this venue, a lot of success. Like 3 trips, no worse finish than 33rd in any of them. Back-to-back top 20s the last 2 years. 68 or better,
Mhm.
7 of the 12 rounds. 68 or better, 5 of the last 8. And he is one of the few people in the field that is both top 30 in proximity on approaches 200 plus yards and also really good on and around the greens. Like that's something that he's really improved in his game the last couple of years. He was really known just as a ball striker early in his career, and he really has. He's became a really good like wedge player around the game, and his putting is getting better as well. Were you shocked because somebody that I do have in that sort of price range and a lot of lineups because I can't believe that, and especially it's probably my favorite bet to win. Jake Knapp is basically the exact same odds
Yeah.
that he was last year. I think he was 45 to 1 last year. He's 40 to 1 this year, plus 360 to top 10. I mean, he dominated this course last year. If you watched, it was unfortunately for me, like an early winner last year. It was like, yeah, this year's going to kick ass. And then I think I had the least winners by the end of the year that I've had in quite some time. But uh, I, I just think this guy can hit it a mile, averages over 310 yards off the tee.
Yep.
Really good ball striker. His big issue this year has been he's really wayward with his tee shots. That's not a problem here because, like what we talked about, very wide. As long as and he usually can control his misses. It's just either right or left. So I think he can avoid the water there, which is the one problem. And then again, like last year, he finished 3rd at Torrey. That rolled right into a win. He had his best finish of the season last week at Torrey. And I think that he's, pulling up the positive momentum. And really, despite not a great year statistically for him thus far this year, he's not missing as many cuts because last year, remember,
Right.
he was really hit or miss, where it was like either a
Yeah.
top 10 or he just missed the cut. It seems like he's figuring out more how to just get the most out of rounds, which is always a good sign. And I think he's going to be absolutely unleashed this week, knowing that he has a course that he can just bomb it down the fairway and have no problem. So, I mean, do you like Knapp? Again, that 40 to 1 number really stuck out to me. I
Yeah.
can't believe he's only 5 to, that's basically 5 to 1 less odds than last year and an even weaker field than what he played in last year in this event.
Exactly. I mean, I'm looking at some of the numbers right now in comparison there with Grayson Sig, and they are almost identical. And another one that's also in that same kind of number range is Justin Lower. So they're all kind of clumped together in there. And I already mentioned Olinson. He's slightly better when we're looking at percentages than any of those guys. But if you need that money, I like that. Justin Lower, Jake Knapp, Grayson Sig there at 8.
Yeah, Lower's another person that I haven't a good bit. Lower is somebody that's a little bit more risky. I
Yeah.
typically do single entries
Mhm.
and smaller ones. That's what I like to do in DK. I just think, especially in golf, I just think it gives you the best opportunity to win,
Yeah.
and you don't have to worry so much about ownership because I think
Or
that's what
double ups. I like those.
I do too. Yes, and it's not sexy, right? Because oh my God, you only if you bet 25, you win 50 compared to you can get it. But those are minefields, right? And
Yeah.
it's like what I tell people, we're trying to win money. That's the
Yes.
objective of doing this, and that's why I would rather play in a much smaller field in a single entry, and maybe even have a little higher entry fee than place like 6, entries into one of the big boys, because that's just, again, unless you're doing max entries, you're really kind of like trying to be a one-legged man in an ass kicking contest. It's just not
Yeah.
going to go very well. But I like Lower a lot, especially in multi-entry events. And I do like his 5-1 top 10. I think that's pretty good odds for a guy that, again, he's another one of those people that he hits it a mile, very good iron
Right.
player, and he doesn't have to worry about, he can get a little wayward with his tee shots as well, and that's not a problem. Sort of in the same vein, and just below in that price range is Carson Young, 7,700. Alan, who I did the show with last year, would probably make fun of me and say, "Oh, so you can't pick your boy Cam Young, who I'm addicted to picking. I don't know what is wrong with me, even though he never wins. I just keep picking him over and over again. I'm going for the closest thing, which is Carson Young. But again, this is a guy that just by the track record alone, I mean, he finished third at this event last year. He's got top fives at 2 other comp courses just in the last 2 years. Obviously, he has no problem playing coastal courses, which is great. And let's see here. Hold on. We have a question. I'm sorry. F6P Chad wants to know, hey guys, is twin T10 parlay too ambitious? Should I stick to T20? It depends what your goal is, Chad, if I'm being honest. Like, I typically don't parlay prop odds because I think it's already so, difficult. I think if you're going to do that, I would do the top 20s, just because it's a better chance. Yes, the odds are going to be lower, but you're going to be doubling them anyway, right? Like by putting 2 of them together. But I mean, if it's something where you want to put a very small amount on it, right? Because if you're doing 2 top 10s, you should be getting at least like 15 to 20 to 1, I would assume, on just about anybody that's not like, say, 2 of the top 10 favorites in this golf tournament. I don't hate that, but I really do like, for my golf betting, I typically do just bets to win, and then I will do prop bets. The lower odds, I just basically do a little higher units, right? Like to where if I'm betting $5 on, say, most of my winning bets and I don't know, like say prop bets, if somebody's say plus 220, to top 5 or top 10, I'd put like 10, 15 on it, because you're not going to get as much return on investment. But that's I mean, 2 top 10s is pretty tough. Like, it really is. You would be obviously picking 2 of the top 10 guys in the field for that week. And as somebody who does golf every week, it's hard to do, right?
Devil's advocate,
Yeah, let's hear it.
being that it's this field in
Ooh.
particular, this might be the best time to experiment with that, because we know, like, I'm even looking at just like percentage odds. Once we get past the top 15, even if I'm counting correctly, then there's like a less than 2% chance of winning the tournament.
Right.
But you're still looking at a 10%. Let's see. Sorry about that. 16% chance of top 10 when we're looking at the top 15 players even. So that's just predictive models, but
Yeah,
it's
but I'm
something
never
to
gonna
think
argue
about.
with statistics, Kelly. I am a stat nerd, so I love that kind of information. And Chad, that makes me feel like that if you want to shoot your shot this week, it's probably one of the best weeks to do it. Because I do believe that, like, kind of what was Kelly was getting into, and I talked about this in my article a little bit, that there's a lot of favorites that I went with this week in my bets, and that's because I think it's a really
Yeah.
small pool of players that has a good chance of winning this tournament. Now, obviously, anybody can win
Yep.
any tournament, and I understand that, but if we're really looking at players that could realistically win the event, I think most the guys most likely, like the one name that we have not mentioned from the top, and I know he's going to be owned everywhere and everybody's going to be betting him, but I mean, Patrick Rogers, like, if there's ever a time for him to get it done, it's this week. Third place last week of the Genesis. We know that's a comp course. Just in November, he finished ninth at the Bermuda Championship. Again, that's another comp course, similar conditions, coastal. He's never finished outside the top 10 at this event, which that's always good. And then just last week, best week of strokes gained off the tee, strokes gained around the green, strokes gained putting, and strokes gained total.
Mm.
So I just feel like that means that obviously everything's rounding into form. And then his best strokes gained approach this season came earlier this year at Torrey Pines, which again, that's
Yep.
another comp course. So these coastal courses, like if he had that much success at Torrey Pines, which has been a course that correlates very well to this one, and in a weaker field, I kind of like Rogers, and he feels like a discount on DK when you look at he's 9,500 again with 3 top 10s at this venue in 3 places, coming off obviously the really good performance last week. And then even somebody like Ashley, who I again really like, being $700 more, especially like in these single entry lineups. I think Rogers is a very, very safe play where he's going to make the
Mhm.
cut, and I think that he should at least be around or near the top of the leaderboard, Saturday, Sunday.
And looking at course fit, he is a good fit for this course, Rogers. So it's exactly what you said. Looking at these comp courses, he plays well at these types of courses. His skill set is set up really well. And I think my biggest piece of advice is just don't get cute on it. I
Mhm.
know there's times where we're so tempted to be like, okay, but what if this guy? I would just stick to your guns. In this particular tournament, I would go chalk if you're gonna go with that. Just
Com
because like we talked about, the field just gets so much narrower when we talk about truly, truly talented golfers.
Yep, and it's gonna sound crazy to say this, but it's kinda like a major because that's the way majors are for me, where in reality, I think there's usually like 15, 20 guys that have a legit, like, real chance of winning the tournament unless something really shocking happens.
Mhm.
And so again, like for me, I'm only going to bet pretty much on the top guys to win the event, but I'm going to take my shots and DFS lineups, prop bets, etc., because there is some really good value on these. Like for instance, like if we talk some of the cheap guys before we get out of here. Hayden Springer, 6,800. He is 7-1 to top 10, 3-1 to top 20. He finished 38th, his only start here. Um, Finished third on one of the comp courses at Grand Reserve or last year. One of the longer hitters on tour, 16th in driving distance, top 50 in strokes gained off the tee. That's a big, obviously indicator here. I know he missed the cut at the Phoenix, which was technically his last start, but before that, 45 fifth or better in 4 straight, including the big one, a 6th place finish at a comp course, Torrey Pines. So now you're talking about, again, just in the last 4 months, he's had 2 top 10 finishes at comp courses to this venue. And what I like is he makes a ton of birdies because in 4 of those last
Yeah.
5 events, he's played 15 birdies and at least 1 eagle, 15 or more birdies, excuse me, and at least 1 eagle in 4 or 5. So that's really good both for DFS and again for like prop bets. Alvaro Ortiz is probably my favorite cheap guy this week. He's 6,300. He's 22-1 to top 10 plus 850 to top 20. So again, that's another one of those guys that you're getting almost 9-1 odds just for a top 20. He finished last season on the Corn Ferry playing really well, 4 top 35 finishes in his last 5. He's from Mexico. He knows this course. Like, he's actually played it. He has more exposure to it than just the actual tournament. But he's also made the cut in this event 2 or 3 years. His best finish was 13th last year in his third start there. He seemed to be one of those guys getting better each time. And then the other guy, like I said, down in this cheap range, I really like Aaron Badley. He's 10-1 to top 20, 6,200. And Badley is a guy that he's got a decent track record here. Like, he's made the cut a couple of times, and he does. He plays really well in these week events. Even though he's not like a really long knocker, he is another guy that one of his big issues is he can spray it off the tee. And this is just a course where Jake Knapp proved that last week. He was all over the place. I know on Sunday, and it didn't matter because there's really no real, penal rough. So I like those 3 guys for DK. Those are the ones that I have in, but I also like those for those prop bets, because in these events where, in some of the, say, bigger field events where there's a lot more studs, I don't even feel good about throwing, $5-10 down, even at 10-1 odds on Aaron Badley top 20. But in this field where we're talking about 10-15 really strong players, it's very possible to do the same thing for Ortiz or Springer or really any of the guys in that range that, say, you have a hunch or you feel good about. Like, take your shot on those plays this week. I just would be careful with the winners, where I know everybody wants to, have that 100-1 or 200-1 winner, but I would be really surprised if that is, something that occurs this year.
I agree. I think the only other player that I would add to that was at 7,500 on DraftKings. We have Erik van Rooyen.
Oh yeah.
And I really like him. He's a very consistent player. He's done well at this course as well, or he has at least some experience at this course. And came in 8th last year and 33rd the year before, and 7.5K. I'm all about that one, I think.
He makes a ton of birdies too, which again, for a venue like this, that's a big deal, because every year this score has been somewhere in like the 15 to 24 under range. So you got to do that. And he's another guy that has a pretty decent track record on these coastal courses. And I agree with you. Like, 7,500 feels like a discount. I don't know what his odds but like, that's another guy that, like, I would look at like the top 10, top 5 odds for sure.
I can tell you that, and he's another one that's just really fit for this course. And I would say everybody we mentioned has been. If we look at like the pre-tournament predictions, let me see. I gotta scroll a tiny bit. Just for some clarity, I guess, when I look at these predictions. So, for instance, this is predicting Rasmus Højgaard to win with Akshay in second. And it's giving them 81% to make the cut. They both share 81%. And then if I scroll down, it goes, into the 70s, into the 60s. But that's okay. And we're looking at Van Rooyen at 66% chance of making the cut and 21.2% of making the top 20. And that, to me, is actually a good bet, because I look at these patterns and there are 3 people above him with a 20% chance to make the cut. And I know 20 to 21% is not that big of a deal, but
It is.
When you're looking at a spreadsheet of people and there are people ranked higher than him, but he has a higher percentage to make the top 20, I love to find those little anomalies.
Yeah, and again, to your Van Rooyen point about him being 7,500, his odds on DK Sportsbook kind of tell you how big of a discount he is in DFS, because he's only 55-1 to win, 10-1 to top 5, plus 450 to top 10. So they're obviously well aware that there's a good chance that he could do all those, or they wouldn't have him at that low of odds. And that's another thing that I've started doing in the last year, especially with DraftKings, because they own both, right? Like, obviously DK Sportsbook and the DK DFS site. And it is interesting to see a lot of times you can find the value plays in the sense of just looking at the odds and go, wait a minute, this guy's odds are way higher than what his DFS price is. And
Yep.
I think that that's a very good point, especially because, again, 55-1, I mean, that's in the range of guys that all those guys are up and almost like that, like Grayson Sig, 5,500. We know he's 8K. I know Charlie Hoffman, I believe, is more expensive. Carson Young, I know, is more expensive than him. He's right there. So it's just, again, yeah, actually Carson Young is 65-1. Justin Lower, 65-1. Both those guys, again, more expensive than what he is this week. Anything that you want to add before we kind of close it out here, Kelly?
No, I mean, you really hit the nail on the head. I think birdies are going to be really important. So one of the final things that I'll do as I look at my pool of players is just pull them up real quick on PGAtour.com, take a look at those stats, and it'll tell you, I don't know how many people do this, but I do it all the time. PGAtour.com, I hit the little spyglass, I type in the player's name, and then I click to look at their performance stats, because it'll tell you versus this field how well this player is going to shake out amongst the others. Like, I just happen to have
Do you do the
Rasmus.
comparisons? Because I'll do that a lot when I have two guys in price range where you can compare two players. It's a great little snapshot. Like, they keep getting better on the website of really allowing you to look up a lot of information kind of.
It's
It's
great.
easy. Yeah.
Especially if you know what you're looking for.
Mhm.
So green is good, red is
Right,
bad,
exactly.
obviously. But when we're talking about an entire field, Rasmus Højgaard, for instance, shakes out 52nd, which puts him in the green for birdie average. And that's something I love. So if we're going to be talking about, you mentioned approaches greater than 200, I believe. He's 26th versus the field. So when we're giving you these data points of driving distance is going to be important, birdies are going to be important, approach over 200 may be important. That's the kind of things that you can pinpoint at a free, simple PGAtour.com search just to do a little comparison.
Absolutely. And actually, sorry, real quick before we go, because Bronny, and I always aim to please, he wanted us to summarize the key stats. I'll go ahead and go over mine. Please, Kelly, add in any that
I think I kind of rattled off, a handful. So go for it.
So I have driving distance, proximity from 200 plus yards. But I will admit, some of the stuff I've been reading lately is you can actually even put that number down to plus 175, especially if the course plays firm. We should know that by Wednesday. Birdies are better gained because, again, you got to make birdies out there. Sand saves gained is one that I added that I had not typically tracked here, but there's a lot of bunkers that have lips and other kind of things into it where they really can. They can kind of grab a player. So I just wanted to add that just to have it there. Strokes gained tee to green. I do that for recent form, not overall. So I look at, say, the last 3 events. Strokes gained approach. Again, obviously looking specifically at proximity of 200 yards. Strokes gained ball striking. I did strokes gained tee to green on courses that play more than 7,400 yards. Strokes gained total on windy courses. Some places, depending on what site you're looking at, could be coastal courses, windy courses, etc. And then again, comp course history really bigger than what it normally is. Because normally I obviously look at course history, but this week I really leaned into similar courses history. What is there anything that I missed there that you really dug into or want to point out?
You even added things that I hadn't considered, but all of the things that you've mentioned, other than playing on windy courses, you can get all of that data versus the field at PGAtour.com. And if you're curious and just want to add another layer of checkpoint, I'm not paid to say this or anything, but I really do like Data Golf, and they have free tools. The Course Fit tool is free. And that could just be another one of your reference points if you want to see how your player stacks up versus that course.
Absolutely. And Ronnie, anytime, man, that's what we're here. We're here to aim to please. I do want to real quickly give a shout out to Ryan Mulvey, who is the host of ESPN Inside Drive on ESPN 104.3. That's down in Panama City. I've been going on a show for about 3 years, and that's actually how I met Ryan. But he had a seizure about a year and a half ago on the air. Turned out he had a brain tumor. He's already had one brain surgery. He's gone through chemo and everything. Everything was looking great. And then unfortunately on a scan, I guess it was about 4 or 5 weeks ago, they discovered the tumor is back. Luckily, it's not as big as it was, but he is tomorrow going to have another brain surgery, which just think about that. It's just, it breaks my heart, but he's just so positive about everything. I shared on Twitter today that, I was just kind of asking him how he handled this. He said, every morning you have a decision. When you wake up, you can choose to be positive or you can choose to be negative. And he says, I choose to be positive, which just, boy, if that doesn't put things in perspective, I don't know what does with what he's going through. He was originally going to join me this season and do this show because, Alan, who had done it the last couple of years, he is now with ESPN Richmond, and just unfortunately, it's just too much for him to have time to record. And Kelly has been so nice that she's going to try to fill in as much as possible in the interim because obviously Ryan's going to need some time after his procedure. But this is what I love about him. He wants to do the show still. He wants to obviously get back on the radio as soon as possible. And I have no doubt after seeing what he did the first time he went through that he's going to kick this cancer's ass and he'll be back and better than ever. Even doing radio shows with a live stream with giant staples in his head because he's just crazy like that. But I am very much praying for him, Beth, his wife, his two young kids, little Ryan and my boy Liam. And hopefully he will be, obviously a part of this show in the future. But Kelly, I can't thank you enough for filling in tonight. And again, I will be calling you basically to fill in anytime you can because I think you're the best. Do you have anything you want to plug or anything before you get out of here?
I've been working really hard the last 3 years at the Sick Podcast Network. We still are doing off-season content. Adam Rank covers the Bears. LQ Laquan covers the Rams. I'm covering the Cardinals. We have a group of guys doing Pittsburgh and a new gal, Elise, doing the Bengals. So there's still some really fun football content out there that's happening. And while not many people are watching, the listening numbers are pretty good. So I'm really excited. This is the first year we had sponsorship, and it's just going to get better from there. So anybody on the Sick Podcast Network, I know you would love their show.
Absolutely. As a Falcons fan, it's tough during the all season, draft season, regular season. It's almost like an abusive relationship at this point, where I know I should just leave and I can't, and I come back every year. But that's football, right? Like you get stuck with the teams that you get stuck with in some cases. Like I do a wrestling podcast with guys that are fans of, Washington, Philadelphia, and New York. And they were arguing the other day, well, I have 2 Super Bowl rings. I have 3. I have 4. And I'm going, man, screw you guys. Like,
I know, right?
Go to hell.
So rude.
Like, seriously. Yeah. It's like, I forget. Yeah. The Cardinals have probably right there with the Falcons one of the most heartbreaking Super Bowl losses ever. So you know what I'm talking about.
Exactly.
But that's amazing stuff. That's like an all-star lineup too of people. So be sure to check that out. Be sure to subscribe to Fantasy Six Packs YouTube channel. If you're not, you should join Fantasy Six Packs Discord. A lot of the stuff on there is free. Obviously, some of the stuff is behind paywall, but there's a lot of cool free information. You can talk directly to the contributors for football, baseball, basketball, golf. We got it all there. It's definitely worth signing up for. And, give me and Kelly, if you're not, a follow on the Twitter/X. And good luck with your bets this week. Kelly, thank you again. And we'll see you guys soon.